The loudest voice is not always the correct voice, and the quietest voices are sometimes the most powerful. And it makes me think of like a classroom. Both my parents are teachers. It reminds me of like a classroom of students. There's going to be those students who are the ones who, oh, me, right? They always have the answer. They always have their hand up, or they're really loud and gregarious and they attract a lot of attention. Whether or not they're a good student is irrelevant. They're just that personality. And I think by default, those loud voices would get the lion's share of the attention. But I think of like the quiet kid in the back who maybe doesn't raise their hand, but still has the answer. And it's sort of like you were the teacher in that moment. And of course, you could have gone for the brown noser, pick me, the one who always has their hand up,
Yep.
the teacher's pet. Or you could choose to let that, put your hand down, Sally. We're going to, ask somebody else. Or thank you, Sally, for your eagerness. I know that you know the answer. Congratulations. But there are other people now. So is that kind of what it was just giving yourself the space to listen and see?
Yeah, it really was. And it's not a practice I'm unfamiliar with, but it was something that was, I guess I was missing. I was just bombarded because it was an important decision. Where do I want to settle down? The loudest voices became the most consuming. And it took a deliberate process of, taking a walk, clearing my mind on the walk, and just being open to whatever popped up. And thank goodness my body was giving me some information during that walk. But people can use any other process of listening to music, maybe even looking at some art, going out and watching a sunset. Some people like drumming,
Yeah.
but staring at a flame, anything that's going to rest your mind. And certainly you want to get the mind out of the fight or flight and into rest and digest, because our focus of awareness then goes from one problem into big picture. And for especially big decisions,
Yeah.
you want your mind to be in that big picture.
Yeah, and I think to acknowledge for people that as we are making changes, especially if it relates to what we're consuming or putting in our body, or just how we navigate the world, right? To your example, you could have been the person who would just shut down the intuition, shut down the body and say, nope, this is where I want to live because it makes sense logically. Okay, well, that satisfies a very small part of you, but the rest of you then is just sort of shoved to the side and like, okay, I guess it doesn't matter. So to let people know that when you are making changes, because even healthy, good change is still stressful to a degree.
Yeah.
It still does create a sense of anxiety and ungroundedness of like, is this new choice safe? So I think just to accept that there are going to be parts of you who are not going to like change, period.
Mhm.
Period. And just because it's loud and just because it's obnoxious or, creating a lot of havoc internally doesn't mean that what it wants is any better for you than it was yesterday. My point here is to give yourself the space to understand that there are going to be parts of you that aren't happy and acknowledge them just like the kid in the class, right? Okay, I hear you, Judge Judy. I have names for all of my inner selves, and one of them is Judge Judy. Okay, I hear you, Judge Judy. Thank you for your time. You're one of my many advisors. You do not get to hog the spotlight. So put your hand down and let someone else speak.
Yeah.
And you said something really interesting about this trance state. And what it makes me think of is a couple of things, that the beauty of the human mind is that it can pivot externally and internally. Very few of our systems can do that. They're either an internal one or they're not. And so the mind, when it's externally focused, is consuming, right? To your point, if I'm in fight or flight, it's in that narrow perspective of where's the nearest exit. Or if I'm relaxed, then it's opening and it's taking in everything and surveying. But at some point, the mind does need to pivot internally so that it can process. I mean, it's got 47,000 unread emails and it just needs a minute to process some of the information we've been taking in. And just to add a piece there, we consume more content in a week than most of our ancestors consumed in a lifetime.
Mhm.
So understanding that our mind is not designed to always be stimulated and activated and taking in images and information and stimulus, it needs time to go dormant and go inside and do its work to process and categorize.
And I needed that time to let the louder voices get quiet.